We're continuing our discussion here on our Nevada Week Extras, and something we touched upon just a little bit, Celeste, but we want to talk about in more detail is education around something like this too, starting all the way at kindergarten through 12th grade, let's say, and then adult education. How can education really impact, you think, this as a potential solution?
Well, I think that the BLM is in a sort of uncomfortable situation of being an agency tasked with doing something that's incredibly public, but they don't have an educational mandate within the BLM as an organization. So I think a lot of their response to things just becomes reactionary. There's not a lot of, front-end education about the Wild Horse and Burro program in general, about how our public lands are managed, even about what AML is and how it's determined on an HMA by HMA basis. People don't know that. And then if they're asking the BLM for that information and receiving the information back, I think people are feeling distrustful of that information. Think of the National Park System and the educational opportunities that they do on their parks and all of the materials that are provided for people and the interpretive walks and campfire type situations. The BLM has none of that. I mean, it's never been asked to have any of that, but I think that it has been to their downfall in terms of something that is so contentious and big as wild horses and burros on public lands.
Gus, let's talk about the educational component. First off, how big of a budget does BLM have for something like this, first off?
I don't know if there is a budget for education, honestly. It's not that it doesn't occur, though, because I've been out on the ground with high school groups, with college classes, with organizations. I've explained the program to them, but it's really small. It doesn't reach the general public. Okay. You know, we put a lot of resources into our websites and information and trying to explain things, but unfortunately, it's just put out there. It's like, go to our website, and if you have people that do not trust the government or don't trust an agency to begin with, that's not going to go anywhere. So it is definitely a challenge that we have as an agencies that we don't have a mandate for.
Well, and I think it's not just BLM, but it's Department of Wildlife too, as well. I mean, we never did a good enough job, I thought, at educating the public to the issues at hand, so that when things arose up, the public was behind you and they would, help in that manner. But I think government overall doesn't do a very good job of educating.
Well, Steve, let's say that state legislation just had an open check of, hey, we can put this much to education. What would be the top priority for you of how to educate our public?
Well, I think, even though the documentaries like we saw on the TV are pretty dramatic, I think that goes to try to initiate conversation about where we are at the present time in terms of habitat conditions, not just for the horses, not just for wildlife, but all users on the public lands. And so while there weren't any solutions that were provided on that video, I mean, I think it starts a conversation about what do we do? This is the issue at hand. We're at a turning point. How do we address this?
Greg, American Wild Horse Campaign, how much budget do you have for education, first off, for a nonprofit like this?
Well, they spend a lot of time with public opinion and developing knowledge with our interested groups and with people that have just a general interest in wild horses, including a lot of our European countries. They come over. There's a lot of tourism that utilizes wild horses and brings in those dollars. We have tours that take place in our area just south of Carson City, Gardnerville. The V&T train that goes up to Virginia City, you should see all of the tourists run to the side of the train when there's wild horses out there. And there's something about it that draws people, right, and has interest. So the education that goes behind that is that you already have interest. You just need to give them a medium to be able to see it, whether it's Facebook, which is a big medium today, brochures, being in locations where there's horses, horse people. And the BLM actually has done quite a bit recently. Their websites are better. They've done better as far as getting adoption pictures out. They've promoted things like their prison program, adoption programs. And so they are making progress there. And I think it's really great because there's interest in it. And it's success stories for the BLM as well.
They get a lot of letters. BLM gets a lot of letters.
Well, and sometimes it's negative press too. And, you know, and I understand that too, and we probably have something to do with that. But
Gus, is that true? Most of the letters you get, are they positive, the mixed, or
you know,
negative?
Most of the letters we get are complaining about some proposal that we're doing. You know, literally we could put out for example, a gather proposal. You know, we could get thousands and thousands of negative responses and just a handful of positive. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, people that are very passionate and vocal about something, they're going to push their response out. If they're sitting the fence, they're probably not going to do anything.
And gather proposals it needs to be public record before you do a gather,
yes,
correct?
for sure.
Right. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Congress just has an open check for education for BLM and something around wild horses and the wild burro. What do you think is the most critical way you can educate our public here?
I think the biggest thing is to understand the laws and the challenges we're under as an agency of how we manage the animals have to be based on these laws. We can't go outside of those boundaries. And I think if we could educate the public about what we can and can't do, I think it might take some pressure off us as an agency, because I think there's so much misconception that BLM can change the world. And I get very rudimentary at times when I explain to people there's 3 branches of government. We're part of the executive branch. We are fulfilling what the legislative branch passes, and then the other part is the judicial branch, and that's when judges will tell us what to do. So, you know, our hands are tied on most cases. As much as we would like to change things as an agency, we just can't do it.
Right, and even when BLM is charged with maintaining a thriving ecological balance with horses and burros on the public lands, I mean, that's defined differently by who you talk to. I mean, so it's a tough job that BLM has, but inaction doesn't help at all in this arena. And we just continue to jeopardize habitats for all user groups out there. So.
And their processes are a little slow in that, you know, the EA environment.
That was an understatement.
Their EA, their NEPA, you know, to be able to utilize PCP, they have to have it in an environmental assessment. And that can take a review period and over a year, right? So you lose 1-2 years, and next thing you know, you have double the horses, right?
We're sued if we use PZP, and we're sued if we don't use PZP. So,
Yep.
Right. I want to come back to what Steve said about being inactive. This is where our public comes in here. We could be more active by just being more engaged and getting out into these public lands and seeing these wild horses. What's the best way to do this? Can we contact Department of Wildlife? Can we contact BLM and we can actually go out and go with somebody that's an interpreter and, you know, kind of commune with the horses and the burros, or how does this work?
You know, definitely you could go to any BLM office, and if there are wild horses or wild burros in that region, the local BLM office can point somebody in the right direction. We have brochures for most of our states. Nevada has a great new brochure that talks about their different herd management areas and where's the best viewing opportunities. And so definitely, if people want to go to public lands, I encourage them to stop by the BLM office. They have maps, they have resources, they have individuals who can help them point them in the right direction.
And Steve, how about state resources? What do we have?
Certainly. I mean, you know, NDOW does wildlife surveys throughout the state, you know, with helicopters, and we certainly count wild horses as we survey. And so, I mean, if BLM, if they can't get a hold of BLM, then there's certainly biologists with NDOW that know where the wild horses are, where they exist, the wild horse territories with the Forest Service, and we can point people in the right direction that way too.
And for those of us that do not have the expertise of people like you and go out and we interface with the horse, what are the recommendations here, just as far as safety and interacting correctly with a wild horse or wild burro?
The term wild is kind of it's a legislative term, you know, but they are a wild animal. And we encourage people not to try to make pets out of them because they are a wild animal, and, you know, keep your distance, enjoy them, you know, photograph them, but really let's not make pets out of them.